Cannabinoids and opioids, a match made in heaven. This is part 3 of our neurotransmitter series. I'm Lex Pelger doing Can Education for CV Sciences. And if you want to help us out with a follow, once we hit 10,000 followers, I can make playlists to keep all this content organized for you. If you want to see more studies on this topic, check out CVResearch.info, where I collected all of the studies on pain, CBD, and THC. Right now we'll cover a little bit of the history, a little bit of the pharmacology, and end with a story from an Israeli rabbi about how this stuff works in the real world. On the history side, I think it's beautiful to see how arguably our two oldest and most widespread plant medicines are opium and cannabis. And both of them helped us discover a lot about ourselves. It was because of opium that we discovered our own endorphin receptors, endogenous morphine. So it was the molecules from the plant that showed us about our own pain system that we use. And the same story happened with cannabis. It took longer because cannabinoids are slippery little fatty lipids that are hard to pin down in a test tube, but it's how we discovered our own endocannabinoid system. It was the plant that showed us the way. What's clear from the studies now is that in general, the cannabinoids help the opioids to work better. Cannabinoids are good, moderate painkillers, but they are not fantastic painkillers like the opioids are. The problem with opioids is that tolerance tends to develop and you need to take more and more of it. So opioids are great for acute pain like surgery, but they are not good for long-term chronic pain. Cannabinoids are actually pretty good for chronic pain, especially because you don't tend to get as much tolerance build up, and once you find the sweet spot that works for you, you can generally keep going with it. One fascinating piece about these systems working together is how some of the opioid receptors form something called heteromere complexes with cannabinoid receptors. And that's when two receptors of two completely different types get together on the surface of the cell and they join together, and joined, they do something different than they do apart. So when they get activated, they have different downstream effects. And so we're not exactly sure what all of these downstream effects mean, but we can co-localize them and realize that the cannabinoid receptors are actually joining up physically to the opioid receptors and helping with pain. However, I suspect that some of the pain-killing properties of cannabinoids isn't only because of the opioid receptors, but of other things they work on, perhaps like serotonin. Because I remember when I was in Israel, I was about to interview Dr. Raphael Meshulam, and I met this rabbi who had a terrible back. And he tried opioids, but he hated them. They made him so fuzzy he couldn't interact with his family, get his work done. And then he switched to cannabinoids, which was quite brave for him at the time. And he said they helped him so much, but they didn't actually dull the pain or get rid of it like the opioids did. It was more that it made the pain farther removed from his consciousness, so he could better go about his day. And so it might not have been exactly an opioid response, but for him, it made all the difference.